Many mysterious sinkholes are formed on our planet. Holes of different sizes and degrees of bottomlessness are formed in the seas, jungles, taiga, and tundra, but it also happens that entire cities are under the threat of going underground. Let's look at the top of the most beautiful and terrible, large and deep failures, where the center of the earth becomes a little closer. And most importantly, as a final bonus, we will discuss what alternative versions there are about the mysterious causes of these sinkholes. Dongguan, China. It is in China that sinkholes occur especially often. Natural disasters in this huge country are combined with extremely intensive construction, which is often carried out in violation of established norms and regulations. In these images we see how the construction of a new underground railway station in the southern Chinese city of Dongguan ended with almost an entire street going underground. The funnel formed in several stages. First, a minibus fell into the first hole with an area of 80 square meters, and a day later, into a hole that turned out to be 4 times larger. The minibus was followed by the structures of an almost completed metro station and part of a city street. In this case, one person died, several neighboring buildings were seriously damaged, and the process of formation of the failure was caught on video. Meridian, Mississippi, USA. Diners who wanted to dine at a fast food restaurant in the rural town of Meridian in the heart of Mississippi were certainly not prepared for the surprise that nature had in store for them. On November 9, 2015, a giant trench 180 meters long and 15 meters wide suddenly appeared in a restaurant parking lot. A dozen cars of the establishment's clients immediately fell into it. Most likely, the cause of the incident was the prolonged rains, which had been falling in Meridian for 2 weeks by that time. Local media reported that a storm sewer ran directly under the parking lot, apparently unable to withstand the pressure of the incoming water. Fortunately, the vehicles were the only ones damaged during this incident. Bataga, Yakutia, Russia. Scientists first discovered the Batagai Fault in the mid-1960s. At that time it was a relatively small ravine, but over the past 5 decades it has grown to cyclopean dimensions of 1 kilometer long, 800 meters wide and up to 100 meters deep. The hole, reminiscent of an overgrown tadpole, is located in a sparsely populated area, near the village of Batagai, where tin mining began with the help of camp prisoners even before the Great Patriotic War. The emergence of this curious object is connected with this circumstance. For the needs of the created mine, forests were cut down in the vicinity of Batagai. Subsequently, active permafrost melting occurred in this area, as a result of which the top layer of soil fell into the resulting voids. Guatemala. And this photo practically became a meme. On February 23, 2007, in the capital of Guatemala, the city of the same name, an almost perfectly round hole with steep walls hundreds of meters deep appeared right in the middle of a densely populated residential area. In this case, there were no casualties. As a result of this tragedy, 5 people died at once. The worst thing is that these victims were not the last. Just 3 years later, in May 2010, another similar failure, 20 meters wide, 90 meters deep, appeared in Guatemala, completely destroying a 3-story factory building. As a result of this incident, 15 people have already died. Both tragedies were caused by a combination of factors. Leaking sewers and heavy rains caused flooding and simply eroded the volcanic and limestone rocks on which the city stands. Ein Gedai, Israel. If in Guatemala the matter was limited to only 2 failures, then in the Israeli oasis of Ein Gedai, located on the coast of the Dead Sea, they literally number in the thousands. The reason for their formation was the constant, ongoing decline in the level of the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea is one of the saltiest bodies of water on the planet. At the same time, due to the ever-increasing withdrawal of water from the Jordan River that feeds it, the water level in the sea is falling at a rate of about a meter per year. The sea saline rock begins to be actively eroded by fresh groundwater, which, in turn, leads to the formation of numerous and extensive voids, the obligatory precursors of failures. It is extremely difficult to predict their appearance, which seriously threatens the tourism potential of the region. Tianquanzai, China. This is the deepest natural sinkhole on Earth. An underground river flowing in the Difeng Cave in the Chinese municipality of Chongqing has, over time, eroded the limestones that form the local mountains. The result was logical. The resulting karst sinkhole is 662 meters deep and more than half a kilometer wide. Speleologists discovered it relatively recently, in 1994, after which the hole received the nickname Sky Pit. In addition to tourists, the pit was favored by numerous plants and animals, including the rare clouded leopard. Solikamsk and Berezniki, Russia. Over 30 years, starting in 1986, 6 large sinkholes appeared on the territory and in the immediate vicinity of the Ural cities of Solikamsk and Berezniki. Since the 1930s, active mining of potassium salts has been carried out here, as a result of which populated areas were surrounded by large-scale mine workings. Moreover, the cities that grew over time eventually occupied the territory above them, and they were separated from the vast underground voids only by a relatively thin, 250-meter jumper. The salt rock underground continues to be dissolved by groundwater. This process deforms the bridges left in the workings between mines, which ultimately leads to destabilization of their structure, flooding of mines, the formation of cracks, and man-made earthquakes. The sinkholes in Berezniki and Solikamsk continue to increase, which has already led to the resettlement of entire urban areas on the surface and the closure of a number of enterprises. Sarasaranjama, Venezuela. Tipuas are unique mesas in Venezuela, the remains of an ancient plateau isolated from the rest of the world at their base. On their flat tops there is a special world with endemic species of plants and animals that have evolved along their own path for thousands of years. In addition to this circumstance, Tipuas are also interesting for their numerous karst sinkholes, the largest of which are located on Mount Sarasaranjama in the Venezuelan state of Bolívar. They were formed by the collapse of the arches of the tunnels of underground rivers that literally pierce the mountain. The largest of the 4 failures on Sarasaranjama are Sima Humboldt and Sima Martel, located 700 meters from each other, going 300 to 350 meters deep into the Tipui. At their bottom there is life of its own, including even large trees, and this life was isolated both from the top of the plateau and from the main earth, a unique microcosm within a microcosm, a thing in itself, discovered only in the 1960s. Darvaza, Turkmenistan. This crater in the Turkmen Karakum Desert has a telling nickname, the Gates of Hell. From the outside he really looks ominous. In the early 1970s, Soviet geologists searching for gas near the village of Darvaza first discovered an underground cavity instead, where all their equipment fell. However, in addition to the cave, there was still gas there, which began to actively seep into the environment. Wanting to save people and their livestock from possible poisoning from the products of these earthly secretions, geologists set fire to the gas, hoping that it would quickly burn out. The scale of the deposit exceeded their expectations. The Darvaza crater is still burning, becoming a tasty object for extreme tourists. And at the beginning of 2022, President of Turkmenistan Berdim Oimdov proposed destroying the Darvaza crater. The head of state then considered it irrational to allow gas to burn that could have been exported. In addition, he suggested that the gates of hell negatively affect the health of local residents and the environmental situation. But now, apparently, this issue will be dealt with by his son, who became the successor to the eccentric president, who delighted social networks with his achievements in almost all industries and spheres of human activity. Great Blue Hole, Belize. This is by no means the largest or deepest hole on the surface of the earth, but it is definitely the most beautiful. An ordinary karst sinkhole, formed after the collapse of the arches of limestone caves, was flooded by the Caribbean Sea. The result of nature's work could not but please people. Surrounded by a coral reef and azure shallow water, the Big Blue Hole, 120 meters deep, was explored by the expedition of the outstanding traveler Jacques-Yves Cousteau, who opened this formation to the general public. Despite its remoteness from the coast and a certain danger, especially during high tides that cause unpredictable whirlpools, thousands of divers now swim to the sea hole to go down to its bottom, see with their own eyes the stalactites growing there, and along the way enjoy the tropical inhabitants of this amazing place. Well, now for the promised bonus. In the 70s of the 20th century, Vladimir Hydrogen Degas of the planet Nikolaevich Larin, a Soviet and Russian geologist, doctor of geological and mineralogical sciences, proposed the hypothesis of the Earth's hydride core containing supercompressed hydrogen. Hydrogen degassing of the planet is the phenomenon of the release of hydrogen in a mixture with other fluids, gases, most often hydrocarbons, helium and radon, in many parts of our planet, in rift zones, during volcanic eruptions, from faults and craters of the Earth's crust, kimberlite pipes, some mines and wells. A separate issue could be dedicated to this theory. It is so interesting, but is it worth it? Let us know by liking and commenting, and if your response is significant, we will put this series into production. And now it's worth taking another look at those faults that, according to the hydrogen theory, are associated with hydrogen degassing of the planet. In zones of hydrogen releases in the Earth's topography, very characteristic subsidence structures are formed, shaped like saucers, the diameters of which vary from 100 m to several kilometers. Domestic geologists conducted research on the Russian platform. However, judging by satellite images, similar structures are present on all continents. And they are especially widely represented on the east coast of the United States. Americans discovered these formations in the 30s of the last century, carefully studied them for many decades, but were never able to establish the reason for the formation of these mysterious structures, which entered the literature under the term Carolina Bays. According to this version, the reason is the same, jet degassing of hydrogen from the deep zones of the planet. Here is another manifestation, the Witch's Circle, a strip of lush and tall grass along the border of a perfectly even circle. It is especially noticeable on usually dry areas of the ground. The intensive growth of plants in rings is not associated with soil characteristics or underground water sources, but is quite explainable by the release of hydrogen. Moreover, passing through the fertile soil layer, the gas discolors it. In intensive places where the original gas is released, soil subsidence and the formation of reservoirs are observed. Larger volumes of gases accumulate, for example, under a layer of permafrost, forming heaving mounds. These shots show such a mound in Yamal, and footage of the further explosive evolution of similar heaving mounds. Karst caves are also the result of hydrogen degassing according to this theory. Passing through the limestone layer, the hydrogen flow enters into an exothermic exchange reaction, forming calcium compounds, water, and carbon dioxide. This results in significant sinkholes and sinkholes. And of course, round lakes. Such failures and explosion craters are gradually filled with water, forming deep lakes without external sources feeding them. On our planet there are many round, deep lakes formed by hydrogen outlets, and if we use this hydrogen theory, which, by the way, has been confirmed experimentally, then all of these are not at all traces of fantastic wars of the past and atomic bombings of bygone civilizations, versions of which are very popular on YouTube. In general, if you want to see details about hydrogen degassing, which, although not included in the current geological scientific consensus, but it is a very interesting version, which also explains the dynamics of ozone holes on our planet, then let me know. Well, that's all for today. Subscribe so as not to miss our next post, and see you.